In this video, I'm going to talk about basic interview questions related to Java 8. We will talk about different new features introduced in Java 8. So let's start. First question. Have you worked on Java 8? Yes, I have worked on Java 8. Generally, interviewer asks this question to acknowledge that the candidate has worked on Java 8 or not. So if the candidate say, yes, I have worked on Java 8, then probably the next question is going to be, what are the new features introduced as part of Java 8? Moving to next question. What are the new features introduced in Java 8? In Java 8, we have default and static methods in interfaces. We have lambda expressions. At the rate functional interface annotation is introduced in Java 8. For each method introduced for collections API. Stream API is introduced. Local date, local time, local late time and other classes belonging to the date time API is introduced. Moving to next question. Why default method introduced in interfaces? Before Java 8, interfaces contains only abstract method. All methods are by default public and abstract. So there was no concept of having method where you can have body in interfaces. With Java 8, default method is introduced. So this helps in achieving addition of a new method in interfaces without need to change existing classes. And this method also has a body. Let's understand like this. Suppose if you have interface called byte and this interface is implemented by, let's say for example, 100 classes. Now with respect to before Java 8, if I add a new method in this interface byte, then I have to change all the 100 classes to accommodate this new method and provide implementation of this new method. So here you can look at a single addition of a method in an interface that is implemented by many classes is forcing the developer to change all the classes. Similarly, in Java, we have list interface, set interface, queue interface, and map that is implemented by many classes. So if you add any method in those interfaces, you need to change all the classes that is implementing list, set, queue, and map interface. Now, with respect to Java 8, if you make this new method as default method, then there will be no impact on the existing classes. So it's up to you. In any class you want to override, you can override, otherwise there will be no impact on the existing class. So this was the difference of introducing the default method in interfaces. Similarly, the next question will be why static method is introduced in interfaces. Moving to next question. Why static method introduced in interfaces? If you want to provide a default implementation which can't be changed, make it as a static in interfaces. Also, this static method has a body in interface. We all know that static belongs to a class and static methods can't be overridden. So if you are putting a static method in interfaces, you can't override it in your implementing class. But you can access those static methods, and whatever the default implementation is provided, you can utilize them either using interface name to access or using object of the class that is implementing that interface. Moving to next question. What are the features of Java 8 you have used in your project? For my project, I have used local date, stream API, lambda expression, for each method, functional interface annotation. Moving to next question. What is the advantage of using new date API? Before Java 8, we do not have support for time zone. We have to programmatically change the time zone. For example, if you are in IST time zone, but in your code you want to display different time zones like EST, UTC, then you have to put if-else condition and accordingly add the time zone in your if-else condition. But with Java 8, support for time zone is introduced, so you would have classes that is more frequently used in case of date API are local date time, zoned date time. Other important classes that is introduced are clock, local time, and duration. So instead of writing if-else condition to have time zone or different time zones, we can use zoned date time. Moving to next question. I have a list. How we can iterate the list and print each element? So let's suppose I have created an array list of integer, and in this list I have supposed an elements like 1, 2, 3 to up to 11. Now if I write like for integer element list and system.out.println element, I am using an advanced for loop to print the element. This is right to iterate the list and print each element, but this is not what an interviewer is looking or wanted to have answer when you say you already know Java 8. So it's better to have like list.forEach element, use lambda expression, system.out.println and print the element. So if you understand this simple question, it will leading to two more concepts. One is of functional interface and another is of lambda expression. Let's look how an interviewer can move to any of the concepts if he wants. Now you have written list.forEach element and passing as lambda expression to system.out.println element. If you look at the internal implementation of this for each, it is like void for each accepting a consumer. Now what is a consumer? Consumer in Java 8 is introduced as a functional interface. So for each accepts a consumer only or any implementation of consumer, but consumer is a functional interface. If I don't use lambda expression and again I have to iterate through each element of the list using for each, how I can do that? So let's implement a consumer implementation to print the element of the list. Now if I look at the implementation of the consumer, we can see here I am creating a print element reference and assigning it with an object of new consumer. And this implementation, if you look, is an anonymous implementation. If you remember, we have anonymous classes in Java, and a functional interface could also be implemented as a part of anonymous implementation. So instead of a single line here, system.out.println, the same thing you are doing with new consumer integer, the method accept you are passing system.out.println. Now if I have to use this print element reference in this list.forEach, how I can do that? I can just pass list.forEach print element. Now Simply you can see here there is a lot of difference in the terms of readability if you're using a lambda expression or you are using an anonymous implementation of the functional interface. This was also one of the reasons of introducing lambda expression, because if you look at this implementation, it is looking quite ugly, and this implementation is much more clear and concise and depicting what the business logic is. So instead of this list.forEach for any functional interface implementation, we can do that easily with the lambda expression. So we can directly write list.forEach element and passing as a lambda expression print system.println element. Moving to the next question. What is lambda expression? Lambda expressions are basically functions with no name and identifiers. It promotes functional programming because it is from where the lambda expressions are coming to overcome the ugliness in implementation of anonymous functions and mostly designed for the functional interface implementations. It helps in expressing instances of single method class more compactly. This is you have seen before if you are implementing a consumer interface with anonymous implementation and with lambda expression. Moving to next question. Do you know what are the various forms of writing lambda expression? Again, this is a beginner level question to understand whether the candidate is acknowledged to writing of lambda expressions or at least know how to write the lambda expressions. So basically there are three ways. Now the first way say if you don't have any parameters, you can use this parenthesis and then provide the expression. If you have parameters, use this parenthesis and then write the expression. Now you have multiple parameters and multiple statements to write. You can use the parenthesis and you can write the multiple statements separated by colon within this bracket. So remember, these are the three various forms. Generally in the real-time project, most of the times we are going to use these forms because never we are doing a single expression based on the parameter coming from the collections API or streams API or anything. We obviously do a multiple statements in the logic. Moving to next question. Can you print user details through lambda expression? Now, depending upon the number of years of experience, either previous question or this question is going to be directly asked to know whether you are capable of writing the lambda expression or not. So let's suppose if I have a user class and I have two fields, ID and name, and both are of type string, and here generally we use @data. This is coming from the Lombok project. So this annotation usually provides you getters, setters equals hash code to string method. Now, in order to have a list of this, I can create list user list equal to new array list. And let's suppose this list reference contains 100,000 users. Now, in order to print this number of users, if I can go with again iterators, again I can go with the for each or an advanced for each implementation. But here a more precise way would be to use lambda expression and for each method. So let's see how we can do that. Now with the list, for each that we have looked earlier was introduced. So this list contain users and for each will iterate on each of the users. So here I have single user. Now this single user has two fields. You can see here a single user has two fields, ID and name. So this single user has two fields and I want to print the details of the user, means I have to print the ID and name also. Now you can see we have multiple statements to print ID, to print name. So we can use system.out.println user ID colon equal to user.getID system.out.println username equal to user.getName. So you can see here, in order to print multiple statements, we are using this bracket, and each statement is separated by this colon. So when you write this, maybe multiple questions will be coming on whether to how to sort the users. Again, get the name starting with A, maybe something B, get the ID equal to this. Maybe if user has a more field like say age, you can also have questions like get all the users greater than 20 or age greater than 20 or age greater than 50 or age between 20 and 50. We can look at all those questions in the next video because we have to understand how the Stream API is going to work. So moving to the next question. What do you understand by @functional interface annotation in Java 8? @functional interface annotation, if used, will force the compiler to check whether the given interface has single abstract method or not. If not, compiler will throw unexpected @functional interface annotation. In order to understand, you can correlate this annotation with @override annotation. So it is not mandatory to use @functional interface, but when you use at the compile time only, compiler will check whether the given interface is a functional interface or not. If not, it will throw the compilation error. But remember here, in many of the interviews I take, I found that many candidates are acknowledging that functional interface is introduced in Java 8 only. This is not true. In Java 8, one annotation @functional interface is introduced, and other functional interfaces like predicate, consumer is introduced. Functional interface concept was present before Java 8 itself. Comparable, comparator, runnable are all functional interfaces, or any interface, custom interface having single abstract method is a functional interface. If you write any implementation of methods that belong to object class like toString equals hash code in functional interface, it is still valid to be a functional interface. Now with respect to Java 8, one annotation @functional interface is introduced. Other functional interfaces like consumer that you have seen earlier, predicate are introduced in Java 8. Moving to next question. Now, if you have experience more than 6+ or you are coming for a tech lead position, an interviewer may ask you this question, that how you create a custom annotation in Java. So create a custom annotation in Java. First, we create @interface, let's say byte programming annotation. And inside this method, I would have a representation and @retention @target. So @target, again @target, what I am passing is element type dot type. Now this annotation byte programming is going to belong to the class level because I have passed element type dot type. So again, you can make annotation on basis of field, on the basis of method, on the basis of class, depending upon what are you passing inside @target. @retention, I am passing runtime. So this annotation check is going to be valid in runtime only. Now inside this byte programming annotation, if you see, I have username method whose default value is going to be byte program. Means if inside @byte programming, if I'm not passing any value, then the default value taken will be byte programming. Then how to use my annotation @byte programming? Simply, you can write @byte programming username equal to byte. So you can see here I am using this on class table only because I have element type. And if I don't pass this username equal to byte, the default value will be byte programming. But here I am passing username equal to byte, so this default value will going to be overridden by byte. Moving to next question. How to avoid null pointer exception in Java? In Java 8 we have concept of optional. So indirectly the interviewer is asking you whether you know about the concept of optionals or not. So Java 8 provides concept of optionals. Optionals can be used to avoid null pointer exception. For example, earlier if you write string value equal to null, and if value is accessed directly without checking null, it will give you null pointer exception. But in Java 8 we can write as optional string value equal to optional.empty. Moving to the next question. What do you mean by stream? Remember that when you say you know Java 8, in any interview, two concepts, first is lambda expression, second is stream, and basic questions related to this concept is going to be asked to you. So always be prepared about lambda expression and stream API and the methods present inside stream APIs when you're going for an interview. So to answer this question, streams are just sequence of data from a source. With Java 8, we can do manipulation on data using stream API easily. For example, YouTube is a streaming platform. So if you're watching a video or when you have started this video, all the content of the video is not getting loaded at once only. As the time is elapsing, the content of the video is coming to you. So this is called streaming. Moving to next question. Can you tell me difference between collections API and stream API? Collection API. Elements are not computed on demand basis. Indexed access is possible in collections API. Iteration is external in collections API. Access of element is sequential. But in case of stream API, elements are computed on on-demand basis. Indexed access is not possible. Iteration is internal. Access of element could be sequential as well as parallel. Now this was one of the important concepts. If you have multiple core processors, you can use parallel processing as well. Stream API provides two types of streams. One is sequential stream, one is parallel stream. Stream does not store data. An operation on a stream does not change its original source. Stream does not have a fixed size. So this was all about the basics of Java 8 interview questions. Till time, stay tuned and subscribe, and if you like the video, provide the feedback either by hitting the like button or commenting in the comment section.